This frickin' hand, man. We started the podcast for this hand saying we're really going to have to seek to understand. And by the end, we understood.
Yeah, we
actually got there. This is a viral hand that I think Hands was lambasted for.
Yes.
And we don't think he should have been.
I was ready to lambast, but I
had my lambasting boots on.
Yeah.
I was ready to wade deep into the lambasting land, but no, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to seek to understand, so let's do it.
Okay.
Two notable things happen early on in this hand. One is that Hands flats queens pre-flop when Rampage opens from the small blind with a straddle behind. This is unusual.
Beyond unstandard.
Beyond Unstandard is the name of our new training software. Get it at YOLO.com. So we get to the flop.
Yeah.
Another non-standard thing that happens is Rampage's check raise. Give me your thoughts on that.
Rampage has a nut blocker, which is kind of cool. But more than that, as the pre-flop raiser and no one 3-bet him, he very reasonably would think he's the only guy who can have ace-king. And he's getting rid of hands almost always with this check raise.
Not with queens, but yeah.
Not this time. And Pav he thinks Pav is taking a lot of stabs when he decides to check this flop in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of I can make extra money for free because if it's going to check through, then a check raise is probably going to work if Pav decides to bet. And if I get called, that's okay. I've got a gutter and a back door, and we'll work it out. And I'm going to put a lot more money in and make everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah, and if Rampage had an ace-7 combo that didn't have the backdoor flush draw, it would probably be a bit too wide to do this. But at this depth, it's reasonable, I think, when you got the backdoor nut flush draw going along with it.
I mean, at least the reason why it's good, of course, is it gives you many more turn barrel opportunities, which are plus EV.
Right.
If we hit a club on the turn, we really are supposed to continue. If we don't, we're mostly supposed to give up.
And after Hands makes the call, which seems reasonable considering that Rampage could very much have ace-king, and we want to stay under repped sometimes. We do get the club on the turn.
Yes.
So we won't know if Rampage was going to rampage on random cards or not. We just can never know. That's another universe. That's a different Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy that know that Rampage really barreled on the 5 of hearts, you know?
Yeah.
But it is the deuce of clubs.
Okay.
So Rampage justified in his overbet on the turn. Now, if he gets called, he has a decent portion of equity, although it's not amazing with one card to come.
And I know we want to get to the river because it's super flashy, but this is a great spot to do this overbet where he should be the only one who can have the nuts. He has great equity when called. Great equity is like reasonable, to be clear, but he's got 2 nut draws when called. He should be able to fold out a huge amount of Hands' range here.
Yeah, any diamonds that aren't the ace-x or king-x of diamonds are going to have to fold. And the ace-x of diamonds might consider folding. It's possible for this price. It's just such a high price. If you don't want to jam, which is a very high variance play, it's possible that you could even fold that hand out.
And we're setting up the threat. Well, we're threatening a big bet on the river right now too by doing this right now.
We did that by sitting down. We're Rampage.
Okay, but Hands has got to know I don't just have to call this humongous turn bet way more than the pot. A lot of the time I'm going to have to hang in there on the river. Now with Hands' hand, he's like, boy, the board could pair would be pretty great. But just sort of saying it to himself. Rampage can hear it because he's sitting right there. But
it's a big leak.
Hands, you should really just think that. Don't say it out loud. But like. What do you do with Jack 10? What do you do with 8-9? Do we just have to hang out with 8-9, right?
Of course.
But it sucks.
That's big bet poker, baby.
Yeah.
That's what we're living in. And we get to the river, which bricks out. Nothing for Rampage. Doesn't pair the board for Hands either. You know, it's still just pure, let's see what happens time. And let's fast forward a little bit to Hands folding.
Okay.
Right? And this is where the lambasting comes in, right? How the hell did this guy flat queens pre-flop and fold a set of queens on the river when a guy who self-titled himself Rampage went for it? How does he do it? He's an idiot. How is it possible?
I mean, it seemed really shocking at the time that Hands actually folded top set when he was this under-repped.
But, Jonathan, I think that we can justify it. I really do.
Okay, let's do it.
There's some combinatorial ways to justify this. We can count combos here, right? So what are the problematic combos? The things that beat us? Obviously,
it's all straights.
It's all straights, yes. And I am of the position, I don't know for sure, that Rampage has 8-9 off in his preflop range and king-9 off in his preflop range. I think that's reasonable from the small blind with a straddle and a 2K big blind ante in there. So that's 48 combos of straights.
Yeah, I'm not as sure that he's got the 8-9 offs as Grant. We ended up sort of deciding to split the baby in half and went with 44 combos instead. But whatever, it's all going to be fine. You'll see.
Sure. Let's say it's 44 combos of things that beat us, that are problematic.
Let's say all the straights.
I think it's questionable, but let's say Rampage is also going for this sizing and this line with sets of 10s and sets of jacks.
Yes.
That's 6 combos that we beat. So
he might not bet full all in, but maybe he does.
Right. So we've got 6 combos that we beat versus 44 that we don't.
Yeah.
Maybe Rampage turns pocket aces and pocket kings into bluffs.
Maybe.
Check raising those in the first place is a rare play. It's really hard to give him all the combos, but let's be as generous as possible on this side of things and say that he has 12 full combos of pocket aces and pocket kings.
I think he wouldn't do that if he had the king or ace of diamonds in his hand with those pairs because...
Did you hear me say let's be as generous as possible?
Okay.
All right. So that brings us up to 18 combos.
Okay.
Then obviously Rampage has the backdoor nut flush draw hands.
Yes.
Which, based on card removal, we did the math on and ends up being 7 combos there of the backdoor nut flush draw. Then there's the backdoor king high flush draw, which I think might play the same way because Rampage played the ace-7 of clubs this way. Why not the king-7 of clubs, which is even kind of better. That's another 6 combos.
Yep.
So that brings us to 31 total combos of hands that Rampage might play this way that we beat.
Right.
Now, we might have to throw in some other random stuff, but I just don't know what it would be. It's hard to say what it would be.
It's hard to believe that Rampage is going to take something truly random and bet over $600,000 on the river with. Now, maybe we're just wrong about that, but I don't think he has complete air here.
So if we give him the 44 combos of hands that beat us and the 31 combos of hands that we beat, we are getting the right price to call.
Easily.
But it's really easy to remove a lot of those hands that we beat. It's really easy to remove aces and kings from that range entirely.
Yeah, those are pretty good bluff catchers. Again, especially the ones without a diamond in them. They're kind of beautiful bluff catchers. I think would be pretty interested in bluff catching with those hands.
Right. It's also kind of easy to say maybe he wouldn't size that big with sets of jacks and sets of 10s.
Yep.
Because, 8-9 is out there, king-9 is out there. You're a little scared of those hands.
Why are you taking yourself to value down?
Yeah.
Value town, right? You could bet $350,000 on the river, save $300,000 every time you're beat, and still get called maybe a little more often by hands that you beat.
Right. So it's possible we're living in a world where the sizing that Rampage chose is actually only the straights and then hands like the one he has, the ace-X or king-X of clubs.
Right.
Then you're not getting the right odds.
Right.
You're not getting even close to the right odds. Add into that this is the biggest cash game that's been played outside of Triton since ever, I believe.
It's right up there at a minimum.
And you might expect that the play is going to be a little less loose. People are going to go for it a little bit less, even players like Rampage. I mean, we don't even have the top of our range as hands. We have 8-9 suited. We have king-9 suited in our range.
Absolutely. King-9 suited is really the hand we want to have, I think.
Yeah.
Right? That's essentially the nuts for us.
We have to call with that.
I guess as hands, maybe we really can have ace-king since we have queens here and we just flatted pre. Maybe we can flat with ace-king too a little bit.
If that's true,
but
by the way.
king-9 suited is like...
If ace-king is actually in our range, that pushes queens further down.
Yep, for sure. But king-9 suited like blocks ace-king. It blocks... Well, I mean, who cares what else it blocks? It's the second nuts. We're never folding.
I think it might be better for hands to have a hand like king, queen, or queen 9 than this hand and call against Rampage's range.
The question is, does he ever get to the river with those hands, or does he fold
fair.
the turn with that big bet after the check raise on the flop?
That's fair. Ultimately, all this to say, unless Rampage has 6-7 of hearts in his range here and some other random shit like this is a justifiable fold.
Right.
I get it.
Right.
Hands, I'm sorry for what you endured after this was put on the internet.
People really were rough, man, and it wasn't right. But I understand why they were rough.
I get it. That was my initial reaction too when we first watched it. I said that I literally said that was the most surprised I've ever been by the outcome of a poker hand when he folded.
Just really quickly too, like here's some other things to keep in mind. As hands, we are still massively under-repped, even though yes, we can have better hands.
It doesn't matter if we're under-repped if it's not the top of our range.
It's very close to the top of our range,
but
though.
You understand that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I do. The other thing that we should at least be keeping in mind, but this goes against what you said, and you're probably right, is Rampage is the vlogger, and he's known for doing sort of wacky, crazy stuff, and him making a viral moment, which happens whether we call or we fold, has value to him.
The thing is, ultimately, Rampage ended up with one of the actually reasonable bluff hands.
Yes.
One of the reasonable bluff combos in his range, because clubs they're not blocker problems for you. Diamonds are blocker problems for Rampage, but clubs are not because they're backdoor.
Right.
So because all of our evidence shows that he just had one of the reasonable bluff combos, we can assume that his range might be kind of the correct range that we just talked about.
We just don't know is the truth, right?
We don't, but this is evidence in that favor.
I don't think it is, but it still is a reasonable bluff combo for sure, and it's got to be one of his bluff combos.
So, yeah, good job, Hans.
Yeah.